Shalom Aleichem, Mishpuchim. I am in the book of Leviticus, in the Parsha of Tzav, Torah Parsha of Tzav. It is a continuation. I am in the second reading, the second Aliyah. And let us begin. All right. So, I believe I start. Let's check it out. Where do I begin? Where do I start? Vayikra, Tzav. All right, 6, 12, 7, 10. All right. Actually, I believe Onkelos is put up here with the Torah. But there's commentary on the bottom, and Onkelos is up here with the Torah. His all of the black bolded letters, if you can see, there's some thick letters, the bold ones. That's Onkelos's translation infused with the Torah itself. And then there's commentary on the bottom. So, all right, let us begin. And there's more explanations of Onkelos's reasons to his reasoning of translation in here in the commentary, so it'll be easier to understand. All right, verse 12, chapter 6 in the portion Torah, the book of Vayikra and the Parsha of Tzav. All right, the Lord spoke with Moses, saying, "This is the offering of Aaron and of his sons, that they will offer before the Lord on the day that they are anointed, 1/10 of 3 sahs of choice flour as a daily offering, half in the morning and half in the evening." All right, verse 12, commentary. With, the Bible has this as 2, biblical understanding as 2. Verse 13, commentary. The offering of verses 12 through 16 discuss the daily grain offering of the high priest. The offering was brought in the morning and in the evening. The statement, Aaron and his sons, does not imply that this was a group offering. It means Aaron and whichever of his sons serves as high priest. Rashi and Rashbam, based on Sifra in the Babylonian Talmud, Menachot 51b. Maimonides, Mishnah Torah, Hilchot, Kelei Hamikdash, explains that this section discusses the regular ongoing priestly offering, while chapter 8, verse 26 through verse 28 concerns the one-time sacrifice brought by the high priest on the day he was initiated into his office. We'll off first, he commented. On the day, the Bible states bayom, on the day, and Onkelos translates it literally. The phrase seems to imply that this sacrifice was brought only once and is the initiation offering that we discussed above in the offering of. Accordingly, Sifra and the Sadi Agon, Ibn Ezra and Chazkuni suggest that the phrase should be understood as miyom, from the day, the meaning that it clearly has in chapter 7, verse 36. They are anointed. The Targum pluralizes, he is anointed, since Aaron's sons were also consecrated with oil on that day, although only high priests were anointed after Aaron's son's generation. 3 sahs. Our Targumist explains that the Bible's ephah equals 3 sahs, as in chapter 5, verse 11. Chapter 4, verse 14, Torah and Onkelos. Prepare it with oil on a griddle. Bring it sizzling, as a meal offering of baked wafers. Offer it to be accepted with pleasure before the Lord. Verse 15, so too the priest, who is anointed under him from his sons, should prepare it. It is a perpetual law for all time before the Lord, that it be completely burned. Verse 14, commentary. Onkelos translates Scripture's machavat with a word meaning griddle, or frying pan. Sizzling. The Bible's bechet is found only here. in chapter 7, verse 12, and in 1 Chronicles, chapter 23, verse 23. Each refers to the treatment of flour. It is explained variously as scalded in boiling oil. Sifra and Rashi, made soft with oil. Rashbam, choice oil. Ibn Ezra in chapter 7, verse 12, and quickly. The Aliyah Gaon. Onkelos does not translate it, but simply incorporates the Hebrew root. Baked wafers, scriptures, tufine is found only here, as is customary in Leviticus for technical items. Onkelos does not translate it. The Aliyah Gaon and Rashbam treat the word as if an aleph is missing and it means bake. Sifra suggests that it comes from two words, te-afe, adding the aleph, na'a, bake well. All right, verse 15. Commentary. Under him, the Hebrew text has a somewhat difficult syntax, for it literally reads, the priest who is anointed under him from his sons should prepare it. We would have expected that the words tachtav, under him, and mi banav, from his sons, be reversed. This would yield, the priest who is anointed from among his sons who are under him should prepare it. Rashi and the Aliyah Gaon understand the passage in this latter sense. See Rashi in Exodus chapter 29, verse 30, where he also changes the structure of a phrase. Completely burned. The Bible's Khalil is also found in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 10. It is a synonym for a completely burnt offering. Verse 16. Torah and Onkelos. Similarly, every meal offering of a priest must be completely burned. It may not be eaten. Verse 17. The Lord spoke with Moses, saying, Speak with Aaron and with his sons, saying, This is the law of the guilt offering. In the same place that the burnt offering is slaughtered, you should slaughter the guilt offering before the Lord. It is very holy. Verse 16. Commentary. Burned. The Bible has it translated, Onkelos has it translated as Khalil. Does Onkelos have it translated as Khalil? I think this is the biblical translation. All right. The biblical translation, Khalil, is also found in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 10. It is a synonym for a completely burnt offering. Why did I just read that? All right. 16 we're on. Okay. Burned. The biblical translation, Khalil. See commentary. The priest does not eat from any sacrifice that he brings on his own behalf, only those he offers for the people. Verse 17, commentary. With. The Aramaic substitutes with for the Hebrew too, in verses 17 and 18, twice. See commentary, all right. Verses 17 through 23 concern the guilt offering, where it is offered, where the male priest may eat part of it, and other laws relating to the sacrifice. Verse 18, commentary. Guilt offering, guilt offering. The Targum retains the Hebrew wording, thereby indicating that it is the chatat, the guilt offering, and does not mean transgression. See commentary on chapter 4, verse 2. Same place, that is, to the north of the altar. Very holy. Nachmanides points out that the Torah repeats the laws of the guilt offering here because it introduces a new regulation in verse 21 that earthen vessels used in the sacrifice must be broken. Verse 18, Torah. Speak with Aaron and his sons, saying, This is the law of the guilt offering. In the same place that the burnt offering is slaughtered, you should slaughter the guilt offering before the Lord. It is very holy. Verse 19, the priest who atones with blood eats it. It must be eaten in a holy place, in the enclosure of the tent of meeting. Verse 20, Torah and Onkelos. Anything that touches its flesh shall be holy. If any of its blood sprinkles on a garment, you must wash the part of the sprinkles in a holy place. Verse 18. Verse 19. Commentary. Atones. Scripture, hamechate, could mean sin, or its opposite, cleanse, or atone. It could also denote who offers the chatat sacrifice. Rashi opted for the final interpretation, while our Targumist, Sifra, and the Saadia Gaon and others selected the second meaning, to cleanse or to atone. With blood, Onkelos, Sifra, Rashi, and even Ezra replaced the Bibles with it here and in chapter 9, verse 15, adding instead the clarifying with blood, the noun used by the Bible itself in verses 20 and 23. In chapter 17, verse 11, Scripture also states that blood effects atonement. Verse 20, commentary, sprinkles. The Hebrew has the passive verb for yizeh twice, is sprinkled, which the Aramaic converts to the active form, sprinkles, as if there were the vowel patach under the yud, the form the Bible itself uses in chapter 16, verse 14. Generally, but not always, our Targumist, like modern writers, prefers to use the active rather than the passive form. Sifra adds that only the spots on the garment where the blood was sprinkled must be washed and not the entire garment. Verse 21, Torah. A vessel of clay in which it was cooked must be broken. However, if it will be cooked in a vessel of copper, it may be scoured and rinsed with water. Verse 22. All male priests eat it. It is very holy. Verse 23. However, no guilt offering may be eaten from which any blood is brought into the tent of meeting for atonement in the sanctuary. It must be consumed in fire. All right. Verse 21. Commentary. Broken. Earthenware vessels are porous and absorb the taste of the holy sacrifice. This creates a problem since chapter 7, verse 15 states that anything that becomes notar, left over from the offering, must be burned. Since the vessels cannot be burned, they must be destroyed. The principle of absorption into the pores of a vessel is also fundamental today in the laws of kashrut. Unkosher metal vessels can be made kosher by boiling them or subjecting them to intense heat to remove non-kosher food elements that adhere to the surface. This process cannot be duplicated in earthenware since the non-kosher food is absorbed into the pores of the vessel. Hence, once an earthenware vessel is rendered non-kosher, it must no longer be used. Will be cooked. Targums revise scriptures past to the future tense to conform with the future used earlier and later in this section. Scoured and rinsed. This process must be performed in a holy place out of respect for the vessels used in the sacrifices. All male priests, a priest who was unfit to bring a guilt offering may not eat it. All right, Onkelos highlights. This is the end of chapter 6. Like modern writers, our Targumist generally prefers active verbs. See, for example, chapter 6, verse 20, where he replaces the passive is sprinkled with the active, sprinkles. Right. Verse 1, chapter 7. This is the law of the Asham sacrifice. This Asham is guilt. It is very holy. In the place that they slaughtered the Olah, the burnt offering, they shall slaughter the Asham. Its blood is dashed on the altar sides. Verse 1. The law of verses 1 through 10 of chapter 7 contain the rules concerning the Asham sacrifice. Verses 11 through 18 and verses 28 through 34, the laws of Shelamim, the peace offering. Verses 19 through 21, the requirement of those who handle and eat sacrificial meat to be ritually pure. And verses 22 through 27, prohibitions about blood and fat, with a closing summary in verses 35 through 38. Asham, the Targum retains the Bible's noun Asham here and in subsequent verses, and does not substitute chov, transgression. The use of Asham signifies that the passage concerns the sacrifice and not the transgression. In verse 2, as usual, the Olah, the burnt offering, is rendered in the Aramaic translation with its Hebrew root without explanation. Sacrifice, the Saadia Gaon adds sacrifice in his Arabic translation. It is unnecessary in the Hebrew as well as the Aramaic because the Targum used Asham, which signifies the sacrifice, as explained in the commentary above on Asham. It is very holy. The law of verse 6 about eating holy items applied to the Asham because it was very holy. The Asham is described in chapter 5, verse 14 through verse 26. See commentary there. And repeated here to include the laws concerning its fat in verse 3, which are not previously mentioned. The verse is who is it, meaning it, should be understood to emphasize that only the animal chosen for an Asham or Chatat can be brought as an Asham or Chatat, and that it must not be exchanged for another animal, no matter what its value. Sifra and Rashi, who follow the view of Rabbi Akiva that every word was placed in the Torah to teach a lesson. Verse 2, commentary, they shall slaughter. Rashi, based on Sifra, reads the plural, they slaughter, to indicate that converts, women, and servants may also perform the slaughtering. Asham, see commentary. Sides, both the Hebrew and Aramaic literally mean roundabout. Verse 3, Torah and Onkelos, he shall offer all of its fat, the broad tail, the fat that covers the entrails, 2 kidneys, the fat that is on them, on the loins, but the diaphragm that is over the kidneys must be removed. Verse 3, broad tail, see commentary. Verse 4, kidneys, the kidneys. The Targumist deletes the Hebrew's definite article hey, which is the, in Scripture's first mention of kidneys, as in chapter 3, verse 4. There are many instances where he felt that although Scripture attaches the definite article hey, it does not mean a specific item, and he therefore omits it. He retains the article for the body parts mentioned following the first kidneys, including the second mention of kidneys, because the is appropriate in these instances since they all refer back to the 2 kidneys. In other words, they are the fat and the diaphragm of the kidneys that were introduced in the verse. Diaphragm, see commentary. Verse 5, Torah and Onkelos. The priest burns them on the altar. It is a sacrifice before the Lord. It is an Asham. Verse 6, every male priest eats it. It must be eaten in a holy place. It is very holy. Verse 5, sacrifice before. Biblical termed it fire too. It is. Bible and Onkelos has it translated who, meaning it, as in verse 1. Rashi, as we wrote previously, felt that each biblical word has significance. He contends that unlike chapter 4, verse 24, where who is inserted in the Torah to teach that the priest must have the intention of sacrificing a guilt offering, or verse 1, where the word signifies the prohibition of an exchange. The word who is used here to indicate that this offering retains the status of an Asham and may not be used for another purpose until the owner has died or atoned with another sacrifice. Chatat, Asham, see commentary verse 1, belongs to. Onkelos treats Scripture's lo as if it were written shelo here and in verses 8, 9, and 14 by attaching a daled equivalent to the Hebrew shin at the front of the word, performs the atonement. Only a priest who is eligible to perform the sacrifice may eat it, but not a priest who is ritually unclean. Verse 8, Torah and Onkelos. Similarly, any priest who offers a man's burnt offering, the skin of the burnt offering that he will offer belongs to the priest. Verse 9, also, any meal offering that is baked in an oven and any that will be prepared in a pan or on a griddle belongs to the priest who offers it. Verse 8, commentary, burnt offering. The priest receives the hide of all sacrificed animals except the hide of the Shalomim, the peace offering, because the owner receives its hide. When the priests receive the hide, Rashi contends that it is given to any priest who is part of the group that is functioning in the sanctuary on that day, even those who did not make that sacrifice. But even Ezra disagrees and states that only the officiating priest receives the hide. Will offer. All of the Targums, as well as the Samaritan Bible, revise Scripture's past tense to the future to match the tenses in the section and conform to the context, which is speaking of a future event, and to parallel verses 3, 11, and 12. Belongs to, see commentary, will be prepared. Again, as in verse 8, the Targums convert the past tense to the future for the same reasons. Belongs to Verse 10, Torah and Onkelos. Similarly, every meal offering, whether mingled with oil or that is not mixed, belongs to all Aaron's sons, treating each man as his brother. Verse 11, this is the law of the holy sacrifice that one will offer before the Lord. Verse 10, commentary, that is not mixed. The biblical Hebrew is vachareva, meaning and dry. Our Targumists and the Septuagint, that is not mixed, repeats the verse's earlier verb, mixed, uses parallel construction and clarifies that scriptures and dry, which it replaces, denotes not mixed. Onkelos fluctuates between 5 different substitutions for the Bible's word biblical Hebrew charav, meaning dry, and uses words that fit the context of the passages: mixed, dry, drought, dry land, and waste. Verse 11, law of, see commentary, holy sacrifice, biblical Hebrew shalamim, which is peace offering. See commentary on chapter 3, verse 1. The Todah, thanksgiving offering, discussed in this section, differed from other shalamim in 2 ways. More loaves were offered, and they may be consumed only during a single day and night, in contrast to the other shalamim, which might be eaten over 2 days. According to the Babylonian Talmud in Brachot 54b, a Todah, a thanksgiving offering, was offered as thanks to God after a person crossed a desert or sea, was released from prison, or recovered from a serious illness. Today, many Jews who have experienced these possibly dangerous situations attend the synagogue service, are called to the reading of the Torah, and recite a special thanksgiving prayer. Before biblical understanding, English 2. Verse 12, Torah and Onkelos. If he will offer it for a thanksgiving sacrifice, he will offer with the thanksgiving sacrifice unleavened cakes that are mixed with oil, unleavened wafers that are saturated with oil, and cakes of choice flour that are mixed with oil. Verse 12, will offer thanksgiving, as with the chatat and asham. The Aramaic retains the Hebrew root and does not explain the name of the Todah sacrifice. With the thanksgiving sacrifice, biblical Hebrew al zevach ha-todah, he offered 3 kinds of unleavened bread, as well as 1 offering of leavened bread for the Todah. Didn't chapter 2, verse 11 forbid the placement of unleavened bread on the altar? Yes, but this leavened bread was not placed on the altar. Onkelos retains the biblical Hebrew word al, which literally means on, both in this passage and in verse 13. Chazkuni in Sadiagon and even Ezra on verse 13, among other commentators, argue that al in this verse should be understood as with, but Nachmanides insists that it should be translated literally because the unleavened cakes, wafers, and bread were stacked on the sacrifice. Verse 13, Torah and Onkelos. With loaves of leavened bread, he will offer his sacrifice. It should be presented with the thanksgiving holy sacrifice. Verse 13, with. The biblical Hebrew in Onkelos' translation, al, see commentary on verse 12. His sacrifice, Rashi, based on Sifra, notes that unlike other sacrifices, the Todah does not possess an intrinsic sanctity, and it may be redeemed for money under certain conditions, such as if it were carried out of the courtyard and thereby lost its sanctity. Holy sacrifice, biblical Hebrew shalamim. Verse 14, Torah. He will offer 1 of each offering as a separation before the Lord. It belongs to the priest who will sprinkle the blood of the holy sacrifice. Verse 15, the flesh of his thanksgiving holy sacrifice must be eaten on the same day it is offered. None of it may remain until morning. Verse 15, verse 14, commentary, he will offer. The Aramaic uses the future rather than Scripture's past tense, as in verses 8 and 9, and will sprinkle 1 of each, 1 of the flour loaves as well as the breast and shoulder of the sacrifice, are given to the officiating priest. The rest is eaten by the person making the offering. Separation. The biblical translation or Hebrew is teruma. See commentary in verse before. The biblical understanding, to, belongs to, see commentary. Will sprinkle, as with, he will offer, earlier in the verse. The Aramaic changes the biblical present to the future, since the verse concerns a future event. Holy sacrifice, the biblical Hebrew shalamim in this context. Verse 15, the flesh of his thanksgiving, sacrifice. The Todah was treated differently than other sacrifices because it expressed a more elevated feeling of gratitude to God and was not prompted by the concern of guilt or a reaction to fear. Must be eaten. Maimonides, in his Guide to Perplexed, states that the Torah wanted the Israelites to show proper respect to the sacrifices so that they should not, after frequent usage, begin to appear despicable. Therefore, the Torah mandated certain restrictions to diminish overfamiliarity. The sacrifices should only be eaten in a state of ritual purity. One who was uncircumcised could not eat it. It could not be consumed if it were left after a certain time period or an improper intention had been conceived, and it had to be eaten in a particular place. Similarly, the sacrifices had to be devoted to God, and whoever took parts of a sacrifice for common use had committed a significant trespass. I just want to see if I'm almost finished reading. What is this? Tzav 7 verse 10. Yeah. All right, and that leaves off there. That is the finishing of the second Aliyah of Onkelos's, of Onkelos on the Torah. Parsha Tzav in the book of Leviticus. And I will read wisdom on what I just read from the Babachur Rebbe. Second reading Tzav. Here we go. What I just read was Leviticus chapter 6, verse 12 through chapter 7, verse 10. Parshat Tzav. God instructed Moses regarding the sin offerings, guilt offerings, and ascent offerings. All of them must be offered up with salt. The title of this daily wisdom on the Parshiot is called Heavenly Salt. Speak to Aaron and to his sons, saying, this is the regulation of the sin offering. The sin offering must be slaughtered before God in the same place where the ascent offering is slaughtered. It is of superior holiness. The fact that offerings were accompanied by salt teaches us that our approach to God must incorporate the various properties of salt. Taste. Salt brings out the taste in foods. Thus, salt is compared to the inner dimension of the Torah, the study of which adds vitality and taste to our observance of the Torah's laws. Permanence. Salt is a preservative. It itself never decays. Similarly, our approach to God must be consistent and persistent. This is achieved when we stir the essence of our soul and reveal our super-rational love for God. Cleansing. Salt is a cleanser and a disinfectant. Similarly, our approach to God must be accompanied by an attempt to purge our lives of all negative forces. Healing. The prophet Elisha healed the poisoned water of Jericho with salt. Similarly, our approach to God must serve to heal our animal drives by eliminating their materialistic orientation and directing them toward divinity. And that is the daily wisdom on the Parshiot, and that is the Torah reading with Onkelos and commentary. Laila Tov, Shavua Tov.